Today I want to go through the OWASP top 10 with you, specifically the 2021 revision. And what we'll do to begin with is just go through a few introductory sections to get an understanding of what it is and how it will benefit you. So we'll start off with why is OWASP good? We'll then look at how does it benefit you individually. We'll explore if there's really a threat out there, and if there is, so what? Let's find out. And then we'll go into each one of the OWASP controls individually. Now what I want to do with the OWASP controls is a little different to other videos that you might see out there. It's a little different to websites out there. And the reason for this is because when I talk to a lot of developers about security, I find that they can grasp the concept of what's going on, but they don't really know what the real world implications are. You ask them if OWASP is something important to them, they'll go, yeah, because it's a default answer. They won't necessarily know each of the OWASP controls. And then if you discuss them, they may not really know or fully understand the real world implications of implementing these against not implementing them. So with each OWASP control, where I can, I want to be able to give you that real example. So I'll open up a terminal. I might compare SSH to Telnet using Wireshark, or I may use a capture the flag style solution that's online, publicly available for people to play with, and show you where not having those OWASP controls in place could really cause some damage, and how the OWASP control could then mitigate it. So you can see firsthand exactly what's going on. Okay, so how does implementing the OWASP top 10 benefit you? And let's be totally honest, right? That's the important bit. If there's no appeal and no interest to you, you're not going to remember why to implement them or what they are. So it's very important to recognize what those benefits are, because it'll help you keep them in mind and hopefully develop with OWASP in mind. So the first one is that it can save you time. Now, by implementing security at the beginning of a project or development, it can save an awful lot of time compared to if after the product is developed. A simple reason for that is at the end, you're going to have potentially a lot of components interacting and making it very complicated. But at the beginning, if you take those security measures and implement them, you can then design the architecture of the product around the security as well. So you've got a lot of components going together, but you're still at the drawing board stage, so you can mix them together and you can make them work. The second benefit is that it minimizes the likelihood of a security breach, and that hopefully will result in less stress. A security breach occurs, everyone's hands on deck, and everyone's trying to get something fixed as soon as possible. A really good scenario here for how this can be applied is it helps maintain a good balance sheet. So ransomware, for example, once it gets into a business, into a product, whether it's paid or not, it's going to have a negative impact, and as a result, you're going to have management on your back saying this needs to be fixed immediately. And even if you're not involved with the fixing of it, it could very well be causing a negative impact on your workload, because you may not be capable of doing the work anymore because your infrastructure that you work on is currently unavailable. So that, as a result, means your work is piling up, but your deadlines aren't changing potentially, and that increases stress because you've got more work to do in less time. The second component of a security breach and the negative impact it could have is it'll result in a loss of business, because most security breaches end up becoming public, and as a result, it damages the reputation of the business, and you may experience less business coming forward for the product or services that you develop. And as a result of that, I imagine there could slowly be a drain off of resources, but still the same amount of work that's required, so you'll be doing more work with less resource. And the third and final benefit that I can establish is that it'll make you a better developer. Think about it from a different perspective though. Think about it as there are lots of developers out there. If you want to go for another job, by making sure that you are up to date with security weaknesses and you develop with security in mind, means you're not going to be developing weak products. And no companies want to have weak products because it could result in negative impacts like security breaches, as I've just mentioned. So by keeping OWASP in your mind, especially if you're doing web application development, you're going to be a much better developer because you'll be able to mitigate a lot of the common security concerns. So why is OWASP good? It's a really simple question. And I think the best way to answer that question is to take a quote from the OWASP website, which details how they go about getting the data that creates the top 10 vulnerabilities. So, to collect the most comprehensive data set related to identified application vulnerabilities to date, to enable analysis for the top 10 and other future research as well. This data should come from a variety of sources: security vendors, consultancies, bug bounties, company and organizational contributions. The data will be normalized to allow for level comparison between human-assisted tooling and tooling-assisted humans. And there's a link down the bottom of the slide that takes you to the OWASP website and details the project top 10. But I think the important key takeaway from this, which is what makes OWASP really good, is they do such an extensive amount of research and data gathering that enables them to have this vast resource of data to analyze and pick those top 10 from. As an individual, you couldn't do that. You would be very, very restricted on where you get your data from, whether the data's been touched beforehand, or whether someone else has analyzed it first, etc. And you'd be feeding off of other people's analysis and that limited set of what's been exposed to you. With OWASP, because it's a positive organization that's there to help the global community, especially in security, a lot of information will go to them in its true form, in its original form, and therefore they can analyze that much bigger set of data to come up with a more accurate top 10 identification list to give you what those top 10 vulnerabilities are going to be. And they will do this on a regular basis. So they did it in 2013 to get the top 10 then, they did it in 2017 to get the top 10 then, and they did it again in 2021. So it becomes a really reliable source as well of data, and they don't want to be getting it wrong. So it's very, very good for that entire reason, that you can rely on it. It's trustworthy. It factors in lots of different web applications from all over the world and different industries, and it comes from different sources of data. We've covered why OWASP is good, and we've also covered why knowing about OWASP will benefit you as a developer. But there's still one key question that remains, and it is the threat real? So by not knowing about OWASP's top 10, are you inadvertently increasing the likelihood that your web application could be attacked? And I'm going to say yes, you are. Because by knowing about the top 10, you maximize your level of knowledge in regards to security against the higher, more frequent attacks that are occurring. And therefore you're able to protect your application a lot better than not knowing about them. And it's worth noting at that point that security threats are real. They definitely occur, and they happen all of the time. And sometimes they even come from the least expected places. So for example, they may come from a customer who has some kind of network connection to yourself and your office, like an IP sector or a VPN, and that attack could come down from one business to the other. Or it could even be an internal employee who receives a very appealing email and clicks on a link and later on realizes actually it was a phishing email. But it could also come from a much bigger malicious entity, such as a competitor who really wants to know how your technology works, your IP. Or it could be a nation state that's just trying to establish what's happening inside of your technology and take advantage of it to breach more places. Now I think at that point it's worth noting that in 2019 there was a study done to try and establish which countries were the best at hacking, who had the best hacking skill set. So the top 10 were created. And in that list, there's no surprise. There's China, there's Russia, there's USA. Even Nigeria isn't that much of a surprise. But Brazil, Germany and Poland, they were a complete surprise to myself. I didn't anticipate them. But what it shows now is that hacking skill set is a global skill set. There's Asia in there, there's Europe in there, there's North America in there, there's Africa in there, and there's South America. So it can come from anywhere, a malicious entity, and it can cause a hack or a breach on your application from anywhere on the globe as well. But what I thought I would do now is just show you in real terms what's actually happening. And
FortiGuard, the company, have a brilliant website called Threat Map, and when you go on there, it shows you a map of the world where you can see live attacks occurring or being detected, but only where FortiGuard is installed. So if FortiGuard's not installed on a system, it would be oblivious, it would never know about it. So this is just against technologies that are being protected by FortiGuard. So let's open this up and show you what's going on. Okay, so hopefully you can see the browser now. In this map, it shows a map of the world, all the countries are identified, and you can see little bits of activity going from left to right, right to left, and up and down, and you see circles kind of flashing. And down the bottom, there's a little box here which shows you the types of attacks that are going on. There's multiple colors for different reasons, there's a severity for different reasons, and there's the location of where it's occurring. So to put into perspective what kinds of attacks occur, if we look at the key, we can see that in red there are remote execution attacks, in orange there's memory related attacks, in blue there are attacks from remote locations, in green there's denial of service attacks, or sometimes distributed denial of service attacks, and the little grey circle will be a single generic attack. So there's 5 different kinds there that are being brought up or generalized, and in this box down the bottom we can see these colors varying on a regular basis, so we can see that there are a lot of different types of attacks occurring from all over the place. And hopefully that puts things into more perspective for you, because it's not just one type of attack that's common. It's not just a distributed denial of service attack to try and knock your technology offline. Now, in fact, it's a lot of different attacks at different severities coming from different places. So protecting your technology, your product, your service, your solution is very, very important, because you can't just isolate one country and say that's a bad country and block it. The attack could come from anywhere.